All right, we're back. Graveyard Shift Movie Podcast, episode number 141. And this week, I watched The Outwaters from 2023, brand new. Little backstory if you didn't remember, back when we did Terrifier 2, you'll remember me and Tyler talking about how when the movie started, all the trailers and stuff were done, and the movie starts, and it started playing all these clips, and it was like, the closest thing you can get to death through a movie and shit. And I was like, God damn, they're really going all in for Terrifier. And then it turned out that it was an extra preview because the same production company made both movies. And the preview was for The Outwaters. And The Outwaters finally came out, and I saw a bunch of people talking about it. I saw Bill Moseley on Twitter fucking talking about it. And it all seemed like it was going to be some pretty gnarly shit. So that's what I went in expecting. Man, I know, I know we've watched some junk, but this is one of the worst movies that has ever been featured on this channel, let alone that I've watched in my spare time. It is 2 hours long for no reason. I thought the movie was over at an hour 10, and I checked the time and saw there was still 40 minutes left, and I was very upset. You can't see anything. I looked up reviews of this movie after I formed my own to see if people agreed with me or if I could just get angry at people liking this movie that I didn't like. And the consensus I saw, at least on IMDb, was that everyone hated this movie. Everyone talked about how this was one of the worst movies I've ever seen. And one person in particular said that it was like looking through a glory hole for 45 minutes. And I could not agree with that man more. So, gentlemen, if you are watching this right now, I salute you for your review. That was spot on with the glory hole analogy. I'm going to give this movie a 1, a straight up 1. I thought about 0, but that's not true. Because even though I say it's one of the worst movies we've ever watched, it's not the worst movie. I know I've given some 0s in the past, and it'd be fun to go back and... No, it wouldn't. I was going to say it'd be fun to go back and watch the movies that we've given 0s and watching them again and seeing if the same opinion still holds up. But that's a terrible idea. I can't think off the head movies that I've given a 0 to. I think I gave a 0 to Megan's Missing. No, I think I gave that a 1. Man, what did I give a 0 to? I know there's at least 2 that I gave a 0. Anyway, it doesn't matter. A 1 for The Outwaters. Very disappointing. I did see another comment describe it kind of like Skinamarink. And I can almost agree with that for the fact that there is a lot of just like off-camera horror. That's most of the movie. But even though Skinamarink isn't great, I think Skinamarink is much better with what it achieved compared to what this movie did. Skinamarink, I was at least like going along with it the whole time. There's a point in this movie where I'm just like, all right, I don't care even what the payoff is going to be. This movie sucks. So anyway, spoiler warning for The Outwaters. I'm going to ruin everything about it. You could go watch it for yourself if you want to. I highly recommend that you don't. This is one of those movies that I'm like, don't waste your time. If it was an hour 20, I'd say go for it. But it's an hour and 50 minutes long. And there's no reason for it to be. So, spoiler warning. I'm going to ruin everything about it. So you've been warned. The movie opens up with pictures of our soon-to-be victims, if you will, that keep flashing up on the screen. And it'll say, like, John, last seen May 19th or whatever, you know. And overlaid with that is the sound of a 911 call, where there's a woman is calling 911, and the operator for 911 is trying to talk to her, but the woman won't answer any of her questions. All we hear is like this demonic screaming in the background and the sounds of people being murdered. And you hear like the cop being like, Jesus Christ, you know? And then we go to the title card. We go straight to the title card, the Outwaters. And then the rest of the movie is evidence that was obtained about I think it's 5 of them, 5 missing people. And they found a video camera, and there's 3 different memory cards on the camera. And that'll be what we're watching throughout the movie. It is a found footage movie. I didn't know it was a found footage when I was going into it. But yeah, which is also another thing, you know, I'm a real sucker for found footage. I like me some found footage, and this movie was just, I mean, there was no reason for him at a certain point to even still be filming. The way that he films, he uses a flashlight that basically you can just see like one little circle and nothing else. So it's just one little circle you have to look through the whole movie. Anyway, so we start off with memory card number 1. And it starts with these 2 brothers who are celebrating one of the brothers' birthdays. I believe he's the older brother. It doesn't really matter. He gets a cool backpack, and they're sipping tequila and shit. We get some drunk fucking arm wrestling in this bitch. I was like, all right, this is cool. And then there's a random earthquake, and I was like, oh shit, we're in fucking that place that all them people died. That was gonna be a timely joke. But then I couldn't even remember. Syria? No. Is it? I don't know. Anyway, you know, that place. And they have an earthquake, and they're like, oh man, that was a big one, you know? So they go and they meet up with this other chick and this dude who, I'm gonna be honest, so this is a band. It's this girl who sings, and she has this guy that plays guitar next to her. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know if this guy goes with them when they leave, because I think I see him at one point, but it seemed like he was just an afterthought in the movie. And so I lose track of this guy. So I'm not sure if he's with the group of people that goes with them. But they meet this blonde chick. Well, they don't meet her. They know her. They go and meet up with this blonde chick and this dude, and they're in this hippie band, and she's singing and shit. And she mentions when she's singing about her mom, and they tell her that she sounds just like her mom. And she says, oh yeah, my mom used to sing me this at night, like a lullaby, you know? And so I'm like, oh man, this mom stuff, this is going to go somewhere. They get those people in the van. They travel even further, and they go and visit another one of their friends, this brunette chick. And she freaks out. She's like, I can't believe you guys are here. This is crazy. Come in, you know? And so we get another 10 minutes of them drinking and fucking and having good times and stuff. They're getting ready, apparently, to go out to the desert, and they're going to film a music video for this blonde chick for her song. They're getting all packed up to leave, and there's another earthquake. This one's more violent. It's bigger. Some windows bust. There's an aftershock that follows. It's big, and it shakes everything. And they're like, man, these earthquakes are getting bad, you know? Then they go to the club. Or no, it's not even the club. It's just one of them is singing at the apartment, and they have flashing lights. And we get a whole, 4-minute dance sequence between the brunette chick and, one of the brothers. I forget how terrible a lot of the opening parts of found footage movies are, because it's just friends that are told, all right, now guys, just hang out and act like you would if you were in a normal situation, you know? And it always just winds up being cringy bullshit for the most part. But yeah, we get a whole dance video. If you're into that, that's in this movie. You can go check that out. And then finally they go to the desert. They get there. They're there for about 2 minutes, and all of a sudden they're inside of a cave, and I thought they were going cave exploring, and I was like, holy shit, these dudes don't mess around. Turns out it was just an old mine shaft, and they were just walking through it, surveying the area. There is, though, I mentioned the cave because there's a cool transition out of the cave where it just cuts straight to them driving through a tunnel, and it's blasting this gospel music. And they've turned the camera upside down. So, the trees, as they're passing, are, upside down. And it's a really cool shot. Probably my favorite part of the movie, honestly. Uh, Eventually, they get to a lake or this body of water that's next to the desert where they're going, and they're swimming around. And the brother who's filming is like, "Oh man, I never want to leave this place." And there you go. That's the end of card number 1. Card number 2 starts off much the same way that card number 1 did, which is them hanging out in this desert. They're throwing rocks and shit, just, messing around. Throughout this day, eventually they. Also, I found it weird. They set up camp here, and it's like nighttime. And I couldn't help but think, like, I don't know exactly where they are, but isn't deserts, it gets like freezing cold at night? Like, they didn't have a fire or anything. I was like, wouldn't they just freeze? Like, you're supposed to have a fire in the desert, right? Anyway, I'm not here to argue climate change. So the first night they're camping, we finally get some action, if you can call it that, where we hear what sounds like a bass drum or thunder or like a shotgun being shot off in the distance, where you'll just hear like a boom, and then a couple seconds will go by and then a boom, And so they're like, what the fuck is going on? So they go outside, and then it gets to like right above them, and it sounds like just thunder, like loud thunder right above them, and it's like, oh, we're gonna have a storm. And then one of them just decides to start climbing up this hill for no reason while all this is happening, and I was like, all right, do you. And then he finds an ant pile, and he's like, I'm gonna film these ants, and he just sticks his camera like in the ant pile, and eventually you see like an ant like crawl onto the lens, and he like freaks out, and he's like, oh shit, it's on my lens. And I was like, well, yeah, what did you expect? You just shoved your camera into a pile of ants, like they're gonna wind up on your camera. Anyway, the next morning there's a bunch of bees flying around. There's this pack of donkeys that they had met earlier in the movie that was just standing there staring at them. And like one of the brothers chased them away, and the donkeys are back. And whatever happened last night, it freaks the brunette chick out, and she wants to leave. But the cameraman is telling her that she's just a diva, and this is about Sally's big music video or whatever. And she's like, I don't fucking care. We need to get out of here. Like, there's some weird shit going on, So, he leaves her in the tent, and he goes and tells his brother, he's like, listen, you need to go calm her down. She's freaking out, and the brother's like, all right, sure, whatever. Well, he doesn't really, the brother in this movie, who's on camera for the most part, anytime they call his name, he just sort of stares at the camera and smirks. He never really talks. Like, every now and then he says something, but it was very weird. The dude with the camera then goes up to like this hillside and sticks his camera in this little hole, and we hear like these weird metallic noises and kind of like the sound of a current and stuff, and him and the blonde chick are like messing around with this hole. Eventually they leave and they go and find a rattlesnake that's very clearly a rattlesnake, but then they have an argument about whether or not it's a rattlesnake, and I was like, guys, this is clear. Have you never seen the picture of a rattlesnake? This is clearly a rattlesnake. And they're like, well, its head doesn't look like it's diamond shaped. And I was like, it's a rattlesnake. And finally it uncurls itself, and they see the rattle, and they go, it's a rattlesnake. And I was like, yeah, what do you think? Anyway, the end of card 2 is just them. They film the music video, but we don't hear any of the sounds of the music video. Instead, we hear the sounds of like this beeping that's underwater, and like this muffled kind of yell that keeps happening in the background. And that's it. That's the end of card 2. At this point, we're about, I don't know, 50 minutes into the movie, probably. Maybe an hour at this point. Card number 3 starts off once again with them hearing the noise outside. It's nighttime, the bass drum. And so they go outside to investigate. And while they're outside, the brother who is filming looks up on the ridge above him, and we see a silhouette of a dude standing there with a hatchet in his hand. And so he's calling out to him. He's like, hey, who is that up there, But the guy never answers. And then for some reason, this dude decides to put down the camera and his flashlight to, I think, maybe adjust the batteries or something, or, you know, something. And so he does that, and then we hear the pitter patter of feet running up, and we hear the hatchet hit skin.
Who is that?
And I was like, oh shit, well, that guy's dead. Turns out he's about to be the only guy left alive because everybody in the camp just gets attacked. It starts off actually with the brother who just got hit with the hatchet going back to his tent and getting in the room where the brother is, and he like reaches out and touches his back, and we see blood on his hands and shit. And then there's just the sound of stabbing, and there's screaming, and all the girls keep going running different ways. And so I was like, is the guy filming killing people? Because that's the way it made it seem. But it's still the brother that has the camera. And so everyone goes running. The blonde chick is like yelling for her mommy. She's like, I want my mommy, you know? And there's a bunch of screaming, and it's dark, and we can't see anything. And then we'll get used to the shot that is 75% of this movie, which is the guy turns on his flashlight, and we see he's barefoot, and his feet are bloody. And that's like 75% of the movie. It's just shots of his bloody feet walking along the desert. Eventually, the screams stop, and the camera guy goes walking over to where he last heard them, and he finds someone completely covered in blood with a hatchet who is stabbing someone on the ground over and over again with it. The brunette chick then like runs out of the darkness towards him, and they meet up and they go running away together. She's freaking out, screaming. Her voice is all distorted like she's possessed. And the thunder thing is happening again right above them. The cameraman basically just leaves her behind. He just runs away from her. He's like, you're being too loud. And he just runs away. And he's like, get fucked, dude. And he just completely abandons her in the middle of the desert. He wakes up the next morning, and he's all alone. He'll be all alone for the rest of the movie, basically. Oh, yeah. So then he gets up and he's walking. And we get our first interaction with, as I like to call it, the tapeworm that just slithers around in this desert. And every time it pops up, it just lets out this screech. And it just snakes by, and everyone acts like it's the most terrifying shit. He runs into the tapeworm, and he's like, oh my god, and he fucking runs away, you know? Then eventually he finds like a house or something. He goes inside of this like house looking building. And inside of it, it seems like he finds the dead body of the blonde chick, but she does, spoiler, pop back up a little later, but we don't know how much of anything left is real, you know? He finds her like laying on the ground dead. And then like one of the fucking bad people makes a noise. Once again, we never see any of this, but so he runs away. And then he goes into the desert, and we hear a voicemail of his mom calling and saying that they haven't heard from him and the brother in days, and they're worried about him. And he strips naked and goes walking out into the desert. And this is where I thought this was the end of the movie. I was like, he's just going to walk out in the desert, and that's going to be the, you know, killing himself, and that's going to be the end of the movie. But he just goes and sort of sits down for a second, and then he just stands back up and comes back and picks up the camera. I don't know why. They just wanted to get a shot of him walking naked in the desert, I guess. I don't know why that was in the movie. He picks the camera back up. The tapeworm pops back up here at some point, and I thought for a second that it crawled up his butt, but it didn't. It just slithered by. It would have been... I would have given extra points if they would have let it crawl up the butt. He's walking around some more. That's what he does. He keeps telling himself, he's like, who am I? Who am I? And he's like, I'm Jason, you know, and he's like reminding himself who he is. Eventually he turns around, and once again we see Or no, I'm sorry. He turns the camera around at one point just to film his eyes and shit, and just flickering around. And I was like, yeah, those are your eyes. This is when Thomas wrote down in his notes, "There's still fucking 40 minutes, dude." Um, he's chilling out on the ground, just doing what you do. And he looks over, and we see the bloody legs of the guy with the hatchet standing next to him. And he just tells the guy, he's like, "Go away." He tells him to go away, and then he brings over like two twigs and a stone, and just puts them down on the ground in front of him, and like builds some we. He's like, "Do you like this? Maybe you'll let it. You know, maybe you'll fucking let me live if you see this." And I guess it kind of does, because the guy lets him get up, but then he runs into him again just after this, because this guy will carry around like a strobe light thing to shine at people. We had seen it once earlier in the movie. We didn't really know what was going on. But he has it again here, and he's flashing it at this guy. And then this guy just flashes through time and like through a fucking vortex, and we see all the like this crazy shit. He's just covered in red. And now he's like, it looks like he's like covered underwater and stuff. Like it's very weird. I don't know what's going on. So, next thing you know, he wakes up. He's outside again. He's all covered in blood and shit. He also wakes up and he's like covered. He like has that tubing that some sausage has, where it like it's like the encasing around the sausage, and he has that like over his feet, and he has to peel it off. The tapeworm thing shows up here again and comes screeching by. It's the worst thing. I hate it every time it pops up. The donkeys are back. They're looking at him. I was like, all right, cool, This is when Thomas wrote down, "Interesting choice to have everyone else die in the movie 20 minutes ago and then just have this one guy bumbling around." He goes walking some more. Then we get some like triangle interstellar type time loop type thing where he looks out in the horizon and we see their past selves walking through the desert on their way to the music video shoot. Earlier in the movie when they were at that lake, there was a point that he looks out and he's filming this guy who's like all red and stuff, but they never mentioned anything about it, so I assumed it was just like one of them in the group. But anyway, so that might have been him filming himself in the future as well. So he goes walking more into the desert, and eventually he sees someone walking in front of him, and he's calling out to them, but they just go running away. It ends up being the blonde chick who's running in front of him, and he catches up with her, but she's all fucking crazy, and she's like screaming, and she won't let him, touch her. And eventually they fall down. They're both exhausted. And then a couple minutes later, the lady just wakes up and goes running again, like just to get away from him. So he goes running. Eventually, he never does get, I think she gets away here. We go to nighttime once again, and the guy just keeps saying, "Do you hear it? Do you hear, or do you see it? Do you see it?" And we hear a woman screaming in the distance. So now he's trying to find the blonde lady again. He's not with her. He goes back in that house place that we were earlier in the movie, and the brunette lady is in here now. And she's covered in blood, and they're in this fucking room together. And then fucking randomly somehow this room leads into his mom's living room, and he goes in there, and like his mom's sitting there, and she's like, "Oh, I'm so glad you're home," but she's covered in blood too. He sees the brother in here covered in blood, and he's telling him how sorry he is and shit. And then we hear the sound of a plane landing, and I was like, what the fuck is happening? Like, what does this mean? He sees the naked dude walking over to him again with the strobe light, and we hear a donkey and shit, but then he disappears. He's gone again. He gets teleported into like a hole in the ground where there's just this giant fucking creature that I think kind of might supposed to be an ant. I don't know, but it was just this giant thing hanging out here underground. Um, he gets out of there. He runs back to the tent where he finds the brunette chick there, and now there's more stabbing sounds. And I was like, maybe the girl is getting stabbed. At this point, Thomas wrote down, who the fuck really cares? The tapeworm's here. It's moving around and stuff. It's all slimy. And now the brunette chick is like possessed and she's naked. And she's like rubbing on her titties and shit. So the guy goes running away. It's dark again. And he finds the axe that the guy was carrying around just like chilling out on the ground. And he picks it up. And then he just like teleports once again into like Whitewater Rapids, and he's just in a bunch of water, the Outwaters, if you will, and and it sounds like everyone's there because you hear like the girls screaming and stuff. And then he reaches the end of the water, and now we're in space, and there's like this nice music playing, and there's like stars and shit, and then there's a flashlight. And some more screams. And then we're back outside. And once again, he finds the naked dude with the hatchet. But here's the thing. The naked dude with the hatchet ends up being himself. And he's like, hey, what's wrong, you know? And the naked dude with the hatchet swings at him a couple of times. So he goes running away. He then finds his three friends. Their heads are severed and they're on like spikes in the ground. They look really bad though. They look like mannequin heads that they just like melted some and stuck them on a pole. And then he's walking and he finds a shark tooth, which at first I thought was a megalodon tooth, but then he picks it up and it was just a shark tooth. It looked much bigger when it was on the ground. He picks it up and then he just starts stabbing into his legs and stuff. And then he just cuts his dick off, because at this point, why not? He cuts his dick off. It's on the ground. He's like stabbing it with the shark tooth. And then he slices open his stomach, and all his organs and stuff fall out. And then he goes walking off all naked and bloody, and his guts hanging out. And that's the end of the movie. He didn't just slit his wrist, the easiest thing to do. He just decided to go out the worst way possible, maybe. By cutting his dick off and making his organs fall out. So, there you go. That was The Outwaters. What a movie. Had a budget of $15,000. I'm surprised it cost that much. I can't find how much it made, nor do I fucking care. Best of, worst of. My best of, honestly, is going to be the very beginning with the 911 call and the pictures of the people that are missing. I thought that was very well done. Set the mood of the movie. Wish the movie could have followed through more on that. But it was legit. It was creepy. It was unsettling. It was really good. Wish they could have. A runner-up is to the shots of the trees and shit that are upside down when they're driving there. Worst part of this movie, the tapeworm that comes flopping around. Absolutely. Worst. It was useless. Hated it. Every time it popped up. Should have never been in this movie. A lot of things shouldn't have been in this movie. It shouldn't have been 2 hours long. It was terrible. You couldn't see anything. It was all dark and black and nighttime all the time. It wasn't... I mean, if you find blood-covered hands and creepy noises every now and then scary, then I guess this is the horror movie for you. But if you don't, then you might not like this movie. And that's it. That's about all I want to talk about it. I just want to move past it and act like this one never happened. So, there you go. That's The Outwaters from 2023. Next week we're gonna watch Pearl. Hopefully Tyler will be here. I'm trying to get him to do it tomorrow. We're both off. If he's not, he hasn't been here the last 2 months. So I'll do Pearl by myself because I've been wanting to watch it. And hopefully, I can't imagine it's worse than The Outwaters. If it is, that's a feat on its own that it managed to do that. But yeah, so we're going to watch Pearl. Hopefully it's real good. Yeah. Go check out the gaming channel. Stuff's coming out over there. There's some Madden stuff. There's some Sons of the Forest stuff. There'll be some Sleeping Dogs stuff soon. So go watch some of that, please. Please. Yeah, and come back here next week, Pearl, when hopefully I'm in a better mood because I didn't have to talk about a shitty movie for 2 hours. Anyway. Yeah. All right. See you guys then. Bye-bye.